I don't give a fuck about a bear. I've seen enough survival movies. I have enough delusion. I'll beat a bear's ass. I'll choke it out. Like, I don't care. Beautiful people. It feels so good to be back here for the second episode of the Homie Love Hour with me, your host, Joe Buck. Now, let's start it off by getting today's sponsors out of the way. First sponsor is High Altitude Comedy. Based here in Summit County, High Altitude Comedy consists of Timmy, Nick, and myself. We get to hang out and tell jokes, and we're fortunate enough to say we get paid to do it. With that being said, how's your week? Tell me about it. The good, the bad, the in-between. We want to hear about it. In the comments, DM me, email me. If you don't feel comfortable talking in a platform where anyone can respond, feel free to reach out. It's what the homies are here for, to build this community so that we can support one another. And that's what I'm here to do. So I just wrapped up practice with Timmy and Nick for those aforementioned upcoming shows, and I was so jazzed I decided to just start recording. Now, this past weekend was arguably one of the most fun weekends I've had in a long time, and I'm very fortunate to have done all the things that I did. Saturday, I showed up to work the Gold Rush, which I found out is the longest running Nordic ski race in the country. 54 years it's been going. And I showed up to do something, I thought was going to be relatively innocuous, like helping people check in or, I don't know, telling people where to go. But I got there, met with the head of events, and found out that the MC never showed up. So they asked me if I would do it. And with no hesitation, I said yes. Now, did I actually want to do it? No. I was extremely nervous. Walking into a situation where you are talking to hundreds of strangers who don't know who you are and are there for something completely separate from what you're doing it's a very jarring experience. But I immediately thought about a conversation that I had recently with a lady named Stephanie from TEDx. And she told me how she gets excited to do things with the possibility of falling flat on her face because it's a new experience that she can take something positive away from and learn. So I wanted to learn something new about myself and see if I would fall flat on my face or rise to the occasion. So it was pretty cold. It was snowy, but it was great. Like, it was very nerve-wracking in the beginning, trying to get people's attention when they're getting ready to do a very important race. There were 5 different groups that went out, and the most rewarding part was announcing the winners, seeing how elated people were to find out that, they had won was amazing to witness. And I was awestruck by the oldest competitor being 85 years old. Now, there are times where I feel I'm too old in my 50s to try something new. So for this lady in her 80s to push herself to do a race that I don't even think I could do now, in more than half her age, I felt as though I still had some growing to do. And I still feel that way. But I got to, again, announce all the winners and give out prizes and just see all these people cheer and have their friends and family there to support them. Even as we were breaking everything down, people came up to thank us for being there and thank us for putting on the race. Then afterwards, I got to come home, hang out with my dog, and then went back to set up for what was, to me, the whole reason why I wanted to do any of this, to participate in an annual event that we do called Spontaneous Combustion. Spontaneous Combustion is essentially a bonfire that we do where from just after Christmas until the beginning of February, people can bring all the trees, trimmings, and Christmas trees and just leave them in this empty lot that we have. We barricade it off. There's DJs, food. We usually be partnered with a nonprofit. So this year it was Mile High Integrated Health. Now, they do some pretty amazing stuff, and I've done some comedy shows with them in the past. So for them to be our partners for this event was fantastic. We get there early, we set everything up, and afterwards, the fire inspector shows up to make sure everything's good. We were walking around talking, and I got to accompany them to check out the fireworks setup. And for anyone who doesn't know me, I love fireworks, like have always loved fireworks. And part of me thinks it's like a genetic thing, because I remember even as a child, my dad would drive us from Florida to North Carolina just to buy illegal fireworks. And then we bring them back and hide them in the attic. And then 4th of July, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, Kwanzaa, birthday, President's Day, Easter, we didn't need much of a reason to blow stuff up. So a part of me, I guess, also relates it to my childhood. So a bit nostalgic for me. We spent the better part of 2 hours hucking Christmas trees into this fire to keep it fed, and to see people cheering for us while we were doing so. It was cool. Like, it was so much fun just throwing Christmas trees into a fire. And then I started to get tired, and someone gave me 3 hot dogs and was like, "Hey man, you look hungry." Normally, I would take that as an insult, but I was like, you know what? I am really hungry. So I sat on a snowbank and I ate 3 hot dogs, and I went right back to hucking Christmas trees. I had an unobstructed view, watching the fireworks in this snowstorm, hearing people cheering and clapping, brought a little bit of sentimental feeling to me, because it reminded me that there's a whole new generation of people who are now going to have fireworks be the center of an important core memory for them. And I absolutely love that idea. Now, after the fireworks are over and, everyone goes home, we are breaking everything down, cleaning everything up, and it's snowing sideways. Visibility is trash, but we are still breaking everything down, putting everything away, taking stuff back to where we need to. And I got home freezing cold, tired. I showered and I laid down in bed, and the very first thing I thought to myself was, that was exactly what I needed. Now, over the past week or so, that same phrase, exactly what I needed, has come up on multiple occasions. Maybe it's just a phrase that I like to use. I wholeheartedly believe that it reminded me that there are times where I need something in my life, but I'm not always sure what it is. And that sometimes when I think I want something in my life, I'm not always ready for it. Now, the term exactly what I needed has come up multiple times over the past few weeks in my life. And maybe it's just something that I say pretty frequently, but I like to consider that maybe it had a deeper meaning. Could have been exactly what I needed for this podcast. I thought back to recent memory that something happened that fit that motif almost seamlessly. Now, prime example was my moving to Alaska. Like, I knew I was unhappy, but I wasn't brave enough to do it myself. Now, you can call it serendipitous, you can call it the universe. If you're a religious person, you can call it God answering your prayers. But if my ex-girlfriend would have never broken up with me, I would have never gotten fired from my job, and I would have never worked at the Sanford airport, I would have never ended up in Alaska. And it's something to consider, because sometimes to get to where we want or need to be, there are growing pains attached to that. And sometimes it's figurative, sometimes it's literal. We unfortunately never know. We just hope for the best. Now, I went to Alaska to get as far away as I possibly could from everyone and everything that I had known. And ironically enough, I get there, I get a job, and when we get on the bus to go to the resort that I'll be working at for the summer, the first, I want to say 15 people that I met, and I cannot stress this enough, all of them lived within 20 minutes of me in Orlando. So the idea that I ran away as far as I could without a passport and ended up meeting people that could have been my neighbors, that I very well could have drank at the same bar with, is irony not lost on me. And I truly believe it's because that's what I needed. I needed that community at that time. And from there, living in Alaska, I wanted to challenge myself to be someone new, to move past who I was when I was in college, just partying and drinking all the time. But I wasn't ready to do that. So I was drinking all day on the job. I was pretty depressed. And then one of my friends invited me to go into the national park with her. That was my first time ever hiking. Now, going from living in Florida below sea level to that hike that we did that day, I thought maybe 10 times over the course of that hike, I'm not making it out of here. I remember we did the Horseshoe Lake Trail. It was my first time ever really being in the wilderness, seeing all these animals and really taking in my surroundings, opened my eyes and broadened my perspective as far as life. After that, I cut back on drinking and started spending more time in the national park. Then right after that, I went to see how far I could go into the national park on my own. So I went as far as the bus would take me for free, which is to Savage River. And if you've ever seen Into the Wild, I will admit it, I still haven't. Savage River is the river that he hikes along before he ends up in the small town. Now, I was immediately enamored with Savage River. So there are ranges on both sides, and they flatten out. Savage River's in the middle. To the north, there's a waterfall, and it leads down into Otto Lake. To the south, on a clear day, you can see Mount Denali. People come from around the world to see and hike this mountain. So the fact that I can see it from where I'm sitting on a rock is mind-blowing. And then I began to hike Savage River as much as I could get into the national park. And then I felt like I wanted to write again. Now, I hadn't felt this desire to write since college, and that is another time in my life where the term exactly what I needed fit perfectly. So I'm on my way back from campus, and it's raining, and I'm going, and this guy is making a left-hand turn, turns out in front of me, and I T-bone his car. Absolutely destroy this thing. He couldn't drive it. And I remember being so angry. I'm like punching my steering wheel. I'm cursing, I'm yelling, and I hear a knocking on my car window. I look over, and the guy who I just T-boned is checking on me. I'm confused, and a part of me is like, this dude is going to confront me for something he did wrong, and I'm about to go to jail because I'm going to beat the shit out of him. I jump out of the car. The guy takes 2 big steps back, puts his hands up, and he asks me, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, what? Because I'm in full fight or flight mode. And he asked me again, "Are you okay?" And it completely diffused the entire situation, because you can't be mad at a person who just asked you, "Are you okay?" At least in this particular instance. So I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Are you okay?" And he's like, yeah, I'm fine. Someone who saw the accident called 911. We moved our cars out of the road, and the cop comes. And this cop was an absolute dick. Like, this guy tried to write me the ticket, even though the driver had just admitted that he was in the wrong. Cop is looking for reasons to take me to jail. He's like, "Oh, your tires are bald. Are you sure you tried to stop?" As if insinuating that I purposely just T-boned this guy to cause an accident. And this guy went as far as to get into this cop's face and said, "You are not listening to me. I told you I caused the accident. Give me the ticket or get your sergeant out here." And without saying another word, the cop wrote him the ticket and gave it to him, got in his car and left. So now I'm sitting there, the guy is sitting there, his car is totaled, and I don't know how we ended up on the topic, but we started talking about books. And I'm like, "Oh, what do you do?" And he said he was an author. And I was like, "Oh, that's super interesting, man. Like, is it anything I've read?" And he's like, "No, not really. I doubt it." He's like, "Oh, are you a big reader?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'd like to think so. I've gotten a few things published over the years, poems, short stories, nothing big." And he immediately stopped me and was like, "Let me tell you, to get anything published is big. Don't ever undervalue what it is that you've gotten done." And then he's like, "Well, I have to wait on the tow truck. I'm going to be here for a while. It's still raining, and we're just standing on the side of the road." So I wait with him until the tow truck comes. This entire time, we've progressed past books. And now it's literature. You know, The Monster of Frankenstein, Wuthering Heights, Jane Eyre, like the literature that I hold near and dear to my heart. And he's like, well, I'm supposed to go meet a client. So that's where I was headed when we got into our accident. So I'm like, hey man, I will give you a ride. And now the roles are reversed because he looks confused. And he's like, are you sure? Like, I just caused you to get into a car accident. Are you sure? And I'm like, hey man, one of our cars is drivable and it's not yours. So this is the least that I can do. So while I'm driving him to where he's going, we're talking about his education, my education. And I find out, grew up in Istanbul, went to Cambridge, went to Oxford, went to Brown, and went to Rice, and has 2 doctorate's degree in literature. Now, I am floored because, you know, I'm talking about my shitty poems and short stories that I've gotten published, and this guy has multiple doctorate's degrees in the very thing that I think, you know, is pointless. And before he gets out of the car, he looks at me and he tells me to never give up on a passion. And if I enjoy it, to continue to work at it. Doesn't matter if it's for anyone else or even if it's just for myself, but to keep working at it. That was my inspiration to start writing again. Then in between that and my sitting on a rock in Savage River, I had decided that partying and my girlfriend were more important than putting pen to paper. So as I'm sitting on this rock in Savage River, I decided I'm going to write. So I started off with a little notepad, and eventually I got an actual notebook. Every day I would sit down and I would write something. And I found it very cathartic to let all of the feelings that I had out, because holding all that in was painful. And it felt terrible. So getting all that on paper helped more than, you know, a shot of whiskey or any, you know, sip of tequila ever did. So that became my form of therapy. And just like I've stated now 3 times, it was exactly what I needed at that time. Then work got busy. Things got crazier. I started spending less and less time in the national park. Then I started just kind of cloistering myself and not spending time with anybody. I would go to work, come home, go to sleep, and that was it. And I started realizing I was falling back into familiar patterns, which is not something I wanted to do. And then it dawned on me one day that summer was coming to an end. So I decided to go back to Savage River one last time. I went, something told me to pack a jacket. I never packed a jacket whenever I went anywhere. And I remember I get to Savage River, I get off the bus. It's a normal day. Everyone's walking around. People are taking photos, doing all that stuff. And I walk to my favorite rock. I'm sitting down writing, and I decide to walk further than I've ever walked. Part of getting away from being a creature of habit is trying new things. So I walk back down this hill, and I'm walking, and then I see everyone is getting in their vehicles and they're leaving. And I'm like, oh, sweet, I have this whole place to myself. And I remember I turned around and I looked at Denali, turned back around to walk, and out of nowhere, complete whiteout conditions, couldn't see a single thing. I am terrified because this is my first time ever in snow. So I turn back around and I start walking back from the direction that I'd come, where I can look down and at least see the dirt from the beaten path. So I stay on that, and eventually it slows down enough where I'm no longer scared. I am now elated because I am in snow for the first time. So I am in snow for the first time in my favorite place after just writing about all the horrible things that I was feeling at that time. And I wrote down how I wanted to see snow. And it happened. I immediately pulled out my phone and I'm taking photos of everything. Snow on the ground, snow on the river, you know, all this stuff. I'm like trying to get all these artsy angles, and all those photos were absolute dog shit. I got no problem admitting it. Eventually, everything dissipates, and it looks as though there was never a whiteout storm. So I'm on the left side of Savage River. So it's mountain range, the river is in the center, and then it's almost like a duplicate on the other side. So as I'm sitting there, I see these two massive birds fly up, circle, and come back down. I see this happen about 2 or 3 more times. Now, mind you, at this time, I'm still the only person at Savage River. And then I look up, and I'm like, man, that rock was not there before. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, oh, that rock is moving. And I realize that rock is a bear. And this bear is coming down the ridge towards me. But Savage River is flowing in between us. So I'm like, I'm Gucci. Like, I don't give a fuck about a bear. Like, I've seen enough survival movies. I have enough delusion. I'll beat a bear's ass. I'll choke it out. Like, I don't care. And then it got to the same level that I was at on the other side of the river. And let me tell you, I could not take that bear even if I wanted to. Like, this thing was fucking massive. So there's a couple 100 yards in between the bear and myself, and there's a whole river. So I had this false sense of security, but I decide in that moment to walk back towards where the bus picks up. Now, as I'm walking back, I keep looking over my shoulder to see where the bear is in relation to me. And then at one point, I turn around and I don't see the bear anymore. And I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, that's what I thought. Bitch ass bear. Like, you ain't want to become a pelt? No way. I felt something staring at me, and I turned around, and in the time that I had walked and kept checking over my shoulder and then stopped checking over my shoulder, this bear had somehow crossed Savage River and is now behind me on the same path. So there is nothing between us but opportunity and space. So I start walking faster, and then at one point I full on sprint. Now, I am not an athletic man. I can admit that. I reserve running for life or death experiences. And I believe running from a bear is one of those instances. So I run and I get to the bathrooms near the bus stop, and I lock myself in the bathroom. All I could think to myself was that scene from Jurassic Park where the guy is running from the T-Rex and he goes into the little bathroom hut and he locks himself in the bathroom stall, and the T-Rex breaks it all down and still eats him. And I'm like, I can't go out getting eaten by a bear in a bathroom in a national park. So I'm sitting in this bathroom with the lights off as if the bear can see under the door and will care enough. But I hear sniffing around and rustling, and then eventually nothing. I don't know how long I was there. Could have been 15 minutes, could have been an hour. I have no idea. But I remember I hear an engine, then I hear an air brake engage. And I'm like, fuck yeah, the bus is here. I open the door just a little bit. I peek my head out and I look around. I don't see the bear. And I run. Second time as an adult that I'd run. And I ran so fast that I tripped and fell into the door of this bus I was trying to get on. I think I scared the ever-living shit out of this driver. So she opens the door and I run onto the bus. She goes, wow, you must be in some kind of rush. I'm like, yeah, there's a bear behind me. And she goes, I don't see any bears. I'm like, no, there is a bear. And eventually I find it. And I'm like, the bear is right there. I point to it. She pulls out her binoculars and she goes, oh, that's a bear. Well, I guess we better go. And she closes the door. And as we're driving away, I thought how I had asked for all of these things, but I didn't expect any of them to happen, let alone for any of them to happen simultaneously. Like, I always wanted to see a bear. I grew up watching The Jungle Book, not my fault. So I'd always wanted to see snow, wanted to see mountains, wanted to hike, and I always wanted to see a bear in the wild. So I got to combine all 4 of those things in one experience. But I wasn't prepared for that, because who is ever prepared to get chased by a bear and have to lock yourself in a bathroom? But again, I had to recognize the fact that I asked for these things and I received them not when I wanted to receive them, but when I needed them most. Exactly when I needed it. February 19th, we will be in Vail at Chasing Rabbits. Then after that, February 24th, we will be back in Silverthorne at the pad hosting an open mic. It is free to come. We welcome people of all talents. So telling jokes, singing, dancing, just please don't play fish, because I'll unplug everything. And then after that, March 8th, we are back in Leadville at Freight for what is arguably our biggest turnout every time we have a show in Leadville. We love going to Leadville. We love being there. And the crowd is like no other crowd we've ever had. Our second sponsor today is Rite of Passage Overnight Oats. Rite of Passage Overnight Oats is based here in Colorado and is owned by me. It started off as something that I did just to save money every morning, because $10 for breakfast burritos every day was starting to hurt my pockets. I wanted to share with my friends, and then it became something much bigger. Since I started just over a year ago, I've started doing farmers markets. I do private events. I sponsor an MMA fighter. Shout out Parker Ford. And I'm currently working on sponsoring a girls' mountain bike team. If you have any interest in picking up any oats, you can check me out at riteofpassageoats.com. That's R-I-T-E, not right like a right-hand turn. So with those out of the way, that was my last time in Savage River for that summer. I knew I wanted to come to Colorado, but I wasn't sure how I was going to make it happen. So the next day, I go to work, and I notice there's nobody in the kitchen. So my lead line cook comes in, and I'm like, hey, where is everybody? And he's like, oh, you didn't know there's a job fair down at the chow hall. So I go to the employee kitchen on property, and all of these resorts are hiring. So essentially, there are resorts that only operate during the summer, and then there are resorts that operate year-round. And the resorts that only operate during the summer, at the end of winter, they will recruit. They will go to ski resorts and everything else and get employees to come work for them during the summer. And then towards the end of summer, all the ski resorts will come there to get their staff for the winter. So if you wanted to, you could just bounce back and forth and go from Alaska to Colorado, back to Alaska to Utah, Idaho, wherever you want to go, essentially, as long as there's work for the winter. Again, knew I wanted to come to Colorado, but I didn't know how I was going to get here. And this falls in my lap. So I'm like, man, this is my chance to go to Colorado. And I see all the resorts, and you know, they all have packets out, and they got their little banners and their promo videos playing, and why you should come work for us. I thought to myself, if I'm going to Colorado, I want to work for the creme de la creme. So I made a beeline straight for Aspen. And it was Aspen Buttermilk and the Little Nell. And after talking to the head chef, I got offered a job at the Little Nell, which is a pretty famous high-end hotel there. And I was so excited. I'm like, hell yeah. I didn't even want to talk to any other resort, but I still did. You know, you got to play the field sometimes. And again, I had it in my head that I wanted to work for the creme de la creme. Then I saw what it was going to cost me to move to Aspen and live in their employee housing. And I decided that I did not want the creme de la creme. I wanted the mid de la mid. So I decided to go to Vail instead. And it facilitated me coming to Colorado for the first time. Now, similar to Alaska, I assumed that I was going to show up in Vail and not know anybody. But unbeknownst to me, two guys that I'd become really good friends with in Alaska decided to move to Vail. So we all became roommates. And yet again, it was exactly what I needed. because these dudes really pushed me to step outside of my comfort zone. Then we had arguably some of the strangest experiences that roommates could have. While I hated working for Vail, I loved my roommates. And then I come home from work and one of them tells me that he's leaving. He's like, yeah, man, I'm depressed. I don't want to be here anymore. I'm going back to California. I'm devastated. The idea that this person that I had assumed would be in my life forever is now leaving. Unfortunately, I've always been a bit of an absolutionist. So it's all or nothing. Either you're in my life or you're not. If you're not my roommate and I don't see you every day, then chances are I won't ever see you again, was my thought process. So 2 days later, he's gone. Then we get a letter on our door that I'm getting a new roommate. And that's how we ended up with Rob. Rob was an 18-year-old who decided to move to Vail on a whim and drove out from Indiana. And after about 2 weeks, he was just dropping acid every day and convinced himself that he was a Viking. So he would take acid at work, come home, take more acid, and then we were trying to go to bed. He would sit us down and tell us his prophetic visions that Odin had bestowed upon him. And usually it was like cheeseburgers flying in the sky or a cat head shooting lasers while spinning. Real prophetic shit. Thank you, Odin, for that. And I'm not going to lie, I hated him as a roommate, but living with him taught me patience. And yet again, it was exactly what I needed. Then at the end of winter, I had always wanted to do a big cross-country road trip. And my roommate, who is also from Florida, tells me that he's driving back and asks me if I want to go with him. Hey, brother, you had me. I'm in. So we pack everything into his SUV and we began our road trip. And love this dude to death, but that truck fucking sucked. The radio didn't work, so we had a little Bluetooth speaker that was glued to the dashboard. We couldn't go above 65 or the truck would shake. One of the windows did not go all the way up. So it was just like air blowing in the truck the entire time. I remember as we were driving across Kansas, we were getting hit with these huge gusts of wind. Like we thought multiple times we were just going to drive off the road. The first day we drove 15 and a half hours from Vail to the University of Arkansas. I remember we get to this girl's house. It's like 2-something in the morning. We get there and I remember she comes out to greet us and she's like very soft-spoken. Hey, how's everything? How was the drive? How are you guys doing? And we're like, oh, we're good. And she's like, great, fantastic. I picked up a couple beers. Come inside and let's have a drink. We open the door and there's like maybe 5 or 6 suitcases of beer just stacked up in her living room. And there's a bunch of people just sitting around drinking. And I'm like, fuck, I just want to go to bed. Ended up not going to sleep until 5 o'clock in the morning, I want to say. And then the landlord busted in the door at 6 a.m. yelling at us, telling us he's going to call the cops on us. So we get in the truck to leave. We get to the highway and my roommate pulls over and he's like, bro, I don't think I can drive. I haven't slept since yesterday. So I end up driving from Fayetteville, Arkansas, I think that's where the university is, to New Orleans. And mind you, we're still in this shitty truck, but I'm loving every single second of it. And the passenger window, the one passenger window did not go down, and then the rear driver window did not go up. So it's hot. We can't hear the music because it's this little Bluetooth speaker. and miserable, but I'm happy because of the experience. We get to our friend's house and she's like, hey, I'm taking you guys out tonight. And I'm like, dog, I don't think I get to after last night. And she's like, no, it's fine. It's fine. We'll go out for one drink and it'll be fine. If a person ever tells you we're going out for one drink, don't ever believe them. Either one, stay your ass at home, or two, be prepared for a long night. We go to her boyfriend's bar, have a couple drinks, and now this is my first ever time in New Orleans. First ever time in Louisiana. Exactly what I wanted. And we go out. We go to all these like service industry bars. I remember this old lady kept following me around. I don't know how she knew where we were going, but she would show up every single time. And I'm so confused. But she kept like staring at me. And I'm like, bro, is this bitch gonna call the cops on me? Like, what is happening? And we go to this bar called Hell, and she shows up. She starts like asking me to dance, and I'm like, there's not even music playing. I'm not doing that. And then we leave and we go to a burlesque show. We're at the burlesque show, and I remember this drop dead gorgeous belly dancer comes out, shaved head. I think she had like a stomach tattoo or something. And I'm like, yo, I would let this lady take a non-essential organ from me if she needed it. And as the belly dancer is coming towards me, we're making eye contact. I'm smiling, she's smiling, and she's about to sit in my lap. And over my shoulder, I hear, this one's mine. I'm fuming. I'm like, who would be so dumb as to get between me and the woman that I'm probably going to have to bail out of jail tomorrow? And it's this old lady. She leans down and whispers in my ear, I can do the same thing. First of all, no, you fucking can't. Don't do that. Second of all, why? Why would you do that? Why would you ruin my good time? So she sits down next to me. She keeps like touching my hand and like trying to whisper shit to me. And I'm smiling and just like nodding my head, trying, not to engage her. And this dude on stage is like mean mugging me. I'm looking around trying to figure out if he's looking at me. And it was like the opposite of the belly dancer situation where I'm smiling, she's smiling. This dude is just like mean mugging me. Like he wants to fight me. And audibly, I'm like, yo, what the fuck is this guy's deal? And the old lady leans over and goes, oh, don't worry about him. That's just my son. And I'm like, so you're telling me of all the burlesque joints in all of the world, I end up in one where your son works and now he's watching you flirt with me. And I'm like, I gotta go. So we leave and we end up back at Hell, and this lady shows up again. And I'm like, God damn it. Like, how does she know? And I realize later that my friends were telling her where we were going because they thought it was cute and funny. At the end of the night, I'm like, I'm exhausted. I just want to go to sleep. This lady says by far one of the craziest, most diabolical things I've ever heard an old woman say. This lady goes, and I can't make this up. She goes, I'm tired of playing coy. And she turns to my friend and goes, how much for him for the night? And in my head, I'm like, I know. I just fucking know this lady's not talking about me. I turn and she's talking to my friend and is pointing at me, but looking at my friend. I'm livid. I'm like, yo, look here, lady. I don't know what year you think it is, but how fucking dare you ask my friend how much I am for the night? I set my own fucking prices. Don't ever disrespect me like that. And at this point, I was getting kind of loud because I was tired and kind of drunk. So everyone is looking at me and she goes, I'm sorry. And she goes, "Can I give you a hug to apologize?" I'm like, "Whatever. Yeah." And I go to hug her. She goes, "Oh, you're too tall. I need you to like lean over to hug me." As I go to do it, this lady full on cocks her head, mouth open, tries to fucking kiss me. And all I could feel is like hot old lady breath on my neck. I think she kissed the neck of my shirt. And I was like, "Dog, if we don't leave right now, I'm going to fucking murder this lady." And we get back to my friend's mom's house, and they're laughing about it. I'm still fuming. But I realized, as much as I did not need the sexual harassment or to be typecast by this weird old lady. Also, I'm sorry, I need to go back. This lady proceeded to tell me before she tried to kiss me that she wanted me to take her home, and I quote, "do to her what the government has been doing to you people for the past 400 years. Let me tell you, there is nothing that will get me in the mood faster than an old lady referencing racism in America. Holy shit." And then she goes, "A man your size, I just want you to take me home and throw me around." And then she proceeds to make sounds that I can only describe as a round of applause. And was like, "I only want that," and screaming coming out of my room. I hated every second of that. Now, again, did I enjoy that? No. Did I enjoy her? Fuck no. But that story and laughing about it is still something to this day that has stuck with me. And for anyone who has ever seen me tell that story on stage, it always has a different ending, because who wants an anticlimactic ending as I just walked out of the bar because bitch said some weird shit? No. So we go back to my friend's mom's house. We tell her the story. And she goes, "Oh, you met Gertrude." She's like, "Yeah, she lives down in this certain area. And apparently, like, she just goes to the French Quarter to pick up black guys." I'm mind blown because New Orleans is not a small city. So the fact that my friend's mom knows this lady by first name tells me I am not the first black guy that she has hit the "you people" line with. The next day, we drove from New Orleans to my brother's house in Central Florida, and that essentially ended the road trip across the country. Now, it's been like 10 years since that happened, but that experience was exactly what I needed. Now, I've repeated that term a lot over the course of this episode because I want to make it abundantly clear that acknowledging when you need something, whether it's saying it internally or externally, however you want to do it, writing it on a piece of paper, burning it, whatever. Once it's out there, you don't know when it's coming, but majority of the time, you're not prepared for it. But it's the ability to pivot and embrace the situation that helps define us and has the potential to make us rise to the occasion and be better people and move past our comfort zones, even if we ourselves don't want to at that current juncture in time. I'm very fortunate that I've had people in my life who have been there to assist me in moving past those uncomfortable points in my life. I'm even more fortunate that I've gotten to have so many experiences that I needed, and even the ones that I didn't know that I needed. The fact that I got to experience them and I have the stories, that's what's most important to me. Now, the caveat to something like having an experience or something that you needed is you also have to recognize when that need is gone or when that need is over, and being able to acknowledge that and understand that not everything and not everyone is permanent in your life is a very tough realization. And at the end of it, sometimes all we have are these stories or the memories, the experiences that we had. And sometimes we lose a person and all we have are the experience that we had with them. Or, sometimes it's like, oh, those are my favorite pair of shoes, and they tear. And then you think back to every concert that you wore those shoes to, or, your favorite pair of skis, and every time you've ridden them on a powder day, or whatever the case may be. It's not always as deep as another person. Sometimes it's just a belonging. Sometimes it is just a day where it's the day with the perfect weather, and the next day is going to be shitty weather, and you're not ready for that great weather to be gone. The best and worst part of being a person and being alive is that these experiences are temporary. The people in our lives could be there for our entire lives, but we're not there for their entire lives. And that's a tough realization. It's something that has caused a lot of existential dread in me. I've lost sleep behind it. And then I realize, that is both the beauty and the horror of being a person. Is like, we don't know when the story's over. So not knowing when the story is over for us or other people is terrifying. But I hope that your takeaway is that you find some level of appreciation in everything you do and in the people that have come into your life, whether it's for a day, a week, a season. There's always a reason behind it. I just hope that it's one that you are ready for and that you don't ever forget to appreciate things. So I think this is a good spot to end tonight's episode. So again, patreon.com/The Homie Love Hour. There are tiers of pretty much every level. Everything goes to support the show and to help me pay Amir for all the amazing editing he does behind the scenes and to help me buy treats for my dog. Instagram.com, The Homie Love Hour. YouTube.com/The Homie Love Hour. I'm on Amazon Music now, RSS, iHeartRadio. I'm even on Reddit, man. Spotify. Then I'll start, tying QR codes to messenger pigeons and letting them loose if it comes to it. But I want to build something great. But like I have stated on multiple occasions, without you, the homies, I'm just a man talking to his webcam in his living room. So I've got comedy shows coming up. I've got public speaking events coming up. If you have any interest in being a part of anything, reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook, Patreon. You can even email me, homielovehour@gmail.com. I'm here for all of it. In the meantime, I'm going to go get some rest. I have work and class tomorrow. So appreciate the people and the things you have around you and appreciate yourself. And with that, let me just say, I love you, I appreciate you, and I hope you never forget your worth. Good night, homies.